We're going to dive into emotional intelligence. Welcome to day 2 of the Power Skills Masterclass. I am Angela W. Stillwell. I am the founder and CEO of Untapped Strengths, and we work with individuals to transform them into top 1% leaders and teams into powerhouses. And this topic that we are diving into today, emotional intelligence, is one that I get requested to teach on and train on quite a bit. And it's something that I'm constantly working on with my clients. We don't necessarily call it emotional intelligence. However, it is a power skill that is one of the top power skills. So listen in as we dive into some of the aspects of emotional intelligence. And as we're diving into this, remember on day 1, when I was talking about that mindset is one of the biggest pieces that we have to be aware of whenever we are improving anything in our lives. Our mindset has to be in the right place. When our mindset is not where it needs to be, it doesn't matter how much change we want to make. Any junk or trash that we have going on in our heads is going to stop us, because any change is considered scary. It's considered a threat. Your brain is designed to keep you safe. It is not designed to help you succeed or thrive. You have to actually train it to do that. And with all of these power skills that we're talking about this week and part of next week, you have to work on, you get to work on, you have the opportunity to work on your mindset. So just remember, be super curious as to what comes up in your mind is subconsciously anytime we are diving into these different topics. Because I know when I first started working on emotional intelligence, on the topic of emotional intelligence, I had a lot of stuff that I thought about. I grew up in a very dysfunctional environment. And, I kind of was a pull myself up by the bootstraps kind of person, put on my big girl panties and go do my thing. And, I didn't have a lot of patience when it came to dealing with other people's emotions. And what I learned over time, that's part of my personality. There's a whole other issue around personality types. And many of you maybe have had different assessments. Maybe you've done the Myers-Briggs, or maybe you've done DISC, or maybe you've done, there's a lot of different ones that are out there. Most of them look at cognitive. There's also cognitive. There's a whole bunch that's out there around the different types of personalities and makeups. And all of that also impacts these power skills that we're talking about. But with emotional intelligence, I want to read the quote from Daniel Goleman, who wrote one of the original books on emotional intelligence. And he's kind of like the godfather of this whole concept of having emotional intelligence. So the way that he defines it, before we dive in any further, I want to read this quote. The capacity for recognizing our own feelings and others' feelings and managing emotions well in ourselves and in our various relationships. There's a lot going on in that, right? There's a lot going on. So when you look at this aspect of emotional intelligence, there's another quote that I want to share with you, and that is by Brian Tracy. And if you heard yesterday me talk about the importance of these power skills, these are the things that are the biggest differentiators. These are the things that employers are hiring for. These are the things that the most successful entrepreneurs really embody. And Brian Tracy's quote says, 15% of success is your technical skills. And if you heard me yesterday talk about the difference between hard skills, soft skills, and what I now call power skills, soft skills are now known as power skills. So 15% of success is technical or hard skills. Okay. 85% of success is around dealing effectively with people. 85% of your success is around dealing effectively with people. And it may even be higher than that. I think that's actually a pretty conservative number, especially given today's environment, where we don't have as many, industrial type jobs. I mean, yes, they're still out there. And now, because we have so much going on from online with social media and how much marketing is done online, and there's lots of keyboard warriors and all of this kind of stuff. The being able to deal effectively with people has just dramatically increased, right? Its level of importance. So let's talk about emotional intelligence today. So EQ is the term that's used out there. There's IQ, EQ, and this week we're going to talk about AQ. But today we're talking about EQ, emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And it's around emotional and social functioning, right? It embodies, what is your performance from this emotional standpoint around well-being. And there are different components to emotional intelligence that people don't even really think about. So those are self-perception, right? How do we perceive ourselves? Self-expression. How do we express ourselves? Interpersonal relationships. What is it like when we're interacting with others around us? Decision-making. Okay. How do we make decisions? Super important. We don't think about the emotional intelligence aspect of decision making, and yet it is a critical piece of emotional intelligence. And then stress management. How many of you feel stressed these days? Yeah, I'm raising both of my hands, right? In the world that we live in today, particularly over the last few years, the level of stress that people are feeling, that everyone is feeling, has multiplied at a rate that we have never witnessed before. So we're going to get into how the stress management aspect impacts emotional intelligence also. So when you look at being self-aware and self-management and management of others and awareness of others, right? All of that is part of the emotional intelligence component of Power Skills. There are 6 core emotions that have been recognized. Now, there's a whole plethora of emotions that are out there, and they are all generally on some scale of these 6. These 6 are anger, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, or surprise. Okay? Anger, fear, disgust, happiness, sadness, or surprise. All the other emotions that are out there, joy and all of that, are on the scale of these 6. These are the core 6. So when we're talking about emotional intelligence, we're going to be leaning into these 6. Yes, you're going to experience all sorts of degrees of these 6. And remember, they all stem from these 6. So we're going to be looking at, how your attitude and your ability and your motivation and your beliefs impact your emotional intelligence. And by the way, your beliefs are impacting the meanings that you put around various experiences. So I keep talking about your mindset. I keep talking about your beliefs and how important they are. Here's a great example right here with emotional intelligence. Your attitude, your ability, your motivation, and your beliefs are all impacting your emotional intelligence. What is your attitude around things? What is your ability? What is your motivation to be emotionally intelligent? And what are your beliefs? Because your beliefs, like I just said, are adding to the meaning that you are putting around every experience. So be real curious as to what comes up for you when we're talking about this, or when you hear someone else talking about emotional intelligence. Like I said, I used to get super impatient. Not going to lie, patience has not been one of my biggest strengths. And, careful what you ask for, because if you ask for more patience, you're going to get all kinds of opportunities to rely on your patience, build that patience muscle, right? So what are your beliefs around things? How are those impacting all of this around emotional intelligence? Okay. All right. So self-perception, we're going to dig into the self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal decision-making, and stress management. We're going to dive into each of those a little deeper. So in self-perception, there's a couple of aspects. Excuse me. There is self-regard. Like, how do we regard ourselves? What do we think of ourselves? What do we, when we think about ourselves, what do we think of ourselves? What meaning are we putting to ourselves? What do we believe about ourselves? Okay. And then the self-actualization, what are we doing to step into, to fully actualize who we are as individuals? If you heard me yesterday talking about the heaven or hell that Ed Milet talked about several weeks ago at an event where I was, the heaven being that when you pass and you enter the pearly gates, you meet the person that you could have become. And you realize that you stepped fully into that. You did everything you could to level up and be the person of potential that you could possibly be. And hell is meeting that same person and realizing you didn't do it. You shut down, you ran because you had fears. You didn't go after that next relationship. You didn't go after that job. You didn't lean in on the love of your life. You didn't do certain things because you were scared. You had beliefs. You were clinging to something that you had put meaning to. Look, that's hell. You didn't self-actualize because you were afraid. That's what it boils down to. So don't be that person. Don't be that person. And when we talk about self-actualization, how many of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So at the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is self-actualization. Here's the issue though. Before you can get to self-actualization, you have to get through all of the other levels of that hierarchy, of the pyramid. And at the bottom of that pyramid is the physiological. Are you getting all of your physiological needs met? Are you? Then above that is safety. If you don't feel safe, you're not going any higher up the hierarchy. Now, look, safety looks different in every relationship. In a work environment, you may not feel safe to speak up. You may not feel safe to ask for that next role. If you own a business, you may not feel safe to put your offer out there. Okay. And if any of those are true for you, what do you get to do to shift it? Because you don't get to the next level, which is love and belonging, until you get past that safety piece. So until you can get past the fear, you're a business owner, you're a salesperson, you run a department, until you get past the fear of getting to your next level, you're never going to get to belonging, connection. You're not going to get to that next level. You're not You don't even have the opportunity to move toward self-actualization when fear is one of the things driving you. Okay. So love and belonging is next. And then you have esteem. What is your self-esteem like? Love and belonging is connection. Do you have those relationships? And then what is that self-esteem? How are you feeling? That's the next to the highest on the hierarchy. And at the very top of the hierarchy is self-actualization. So you get to do all of those other things before you get to self-actualization. And all that stuff going on between your ears, that messy middle that I talked about yesterday, that junk, that those beliefs that have been put in your brain by others, that you get to choose whether they're true or not. And look, I get it. I get it. I've done this work myself, continue to do this work. This is work that never ends, because every time you level up, there's a new level of whatever it was that was keeping you back. Okay. And, those internal voices, those internal stories, those internal feelings and beliefs can be super harsh. And, I empathize because I've been there. I have absolutely been there. When I went through my divorce many years ago, after coming out of the divorce, one of the biggest things that I had to deal with was my lack of self-worth. And I don't know where it broke down, because as a kid, I was dynamic and determined, and despite the dysfunction, or maybe in spite of the dysfunction, because as a kid, I literally at the age of 5 overheard a conversation that my mom and dad were having on the phone. And at the age of 5, you remember those long kitchen phone cords? I could see my mom standing around the corner in this long cord, and I could hear her having this conversation with my dad. And as a 5-year-old, I declared at that moment that I would not live my life like that. And so from that moment on, I did all sorts of things to make sure that I didn't. I got great grades. I went, I actually ended up, even in high school, moving out. I wasn't living with either one of my parents. I moved with my grandparents because of the situations that my parents had gotten divorced when I was 10. And my dad was moving around, and my mom was in a situation that ended up ending tragically for her. And so, I made the decision to move out. And somewhere along the way, I lost that feeling of worth. And when I went through my divorce, man, that pounded hard. And that was one of the biggest things that I had to overcome. And it's also one of the reasons why I do this work now, because I realized what it took in order to do that, so that I could achieve my goals. I could achieve my dreams. I could have visions and actually work toward them. So, the self-actualization part and the beliefs and all of that, just recognizing how integrated and intertwined those things are. It's why I keep hounding on you to really pay attention to what your subconscious is saying. Because it's only when you become aware of that you get to make changes with it. All right. So self-expression. With self-expression, there's the emotional aspect of self-expression, right? There is assertiveness, not aggressive, assertive. And when I say those two words, I want you to listen in to what your brain is saying, because aggressive and assertive is going to look different to every person. And then there's also passive aggressive, right? But it's going to look different to every person out there based on your personality, based on your experiences, based on your beliefs. What you believe to be assertive is going to look aggressive to a lot of people. It just is. And so how do you get to express yourself in a way that doesn't come across as aggressive, but rather assertive with whomever you're speaking to? Let me give you a hint. It's a secret. You get to flex. You get to express yourself based on the person with whom you are expressing it or to whom you are expressing it. And then there's independence, right? How does your independence impact your self-expression? All right, then there's the interpersonal, the interpersonal aspect of emotional intelligence. And in the interpersonal aspect, there's relationships, there's empathy, there's social responsibility, right? So when you're looking at the interpersonal, you get to really take in, what do my relationships look like? Personal, family, business, community. What do those look like? Who are those people? How are they acting, receiving, responding, right? And then how do I respond to each of them? Do I one size fit all response? Do I flex based on who I'm working with? Because that's the key. Being able to flex, all right? And then the social responsibility, what are you doing in your community? And community can be your neighborhood, it can be your business, it can be your family. What are you doing to be socially responsible in those areas? And look, I'm going to tell you, listen to me. What comes up for you when I use the phrase social responsibility? What's coming up for you? All right. And you know what? Just jot down anytime you're recognizing these thoughts. I really want you to bring your subconscious thoughts to the consciousness, because this mindset piece is huge with every single one of these skills that we're going to be talking about, that we are talking about, and that we're going to be talking about. Have you ever read the book, The Four Agreements? Because the Four Agreements are something that I can't remember the guy's name. Miguel. I can't remember his name. It's Miguel, some. It's a tiny little book, super easy to read. Bottom line is the Four Agreements are something that you can use all the time in the interpersonal aspect of emotional intelligence. And the first agreement is to be impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your word. With yourself first. Be impeccable with your word, with yourself. So are you one of those people who puts things on your calendar for yourself, and then if somebody else comes along, you may move it around because it's somebody else, or you don't honor it because somebody else is more important? Like, you put on your calendar, I'm going to the gym at 5:00 every day this week. But then your best friend calls and says, hey, let's go get a margarita. And you're like, oh, margarita sounds good. And besides, I need to spend time with my best friend, right? Be impeccable with your word, starting with your word with yourself, and then be impeccable with your word with everyone else. The second of the Four Agreements is don't take anything personal. What? Yes, don't take anything personal. All right, listen. This one, there are going to be things that people do, and you're going to swear that you get to take it personal. Don't take it personal. Because here's the thing. Regardless of what they're doing, and even if they intend for it to be personal, that's about them. That's not about you. Now, if you've done something, then you get to take responsibility, right? And you get to have 100% responsibility anyway. But don't take anything personally. And there's a little bit more on that in the book. Don't make assumptions. How often do we make assumptions? I do. We all do. We're human. So the idea of the 4 agreements is to improve on these. So where is it that you're making assumptions that get you in trouble? Are you assuming that the guy who cut you off in traffic was a butthole? Maybe he is. Or maybe he was rushing to the hospital because his child had just fallen on the playground. Or maybe they just had a really bad fight with their significant other before they left the house. Or maybe there's a whole list of things, right? Could be that he's just not a nice person, but it could be a whole list of other things. And odds are really good that there is a whole list of other things that impacted why this person did that, right? So don't make assumptions. And then 4th is always do your best. And look, I get it. Your best is going to look different every single day. And it's going to be based on all of the things that we've already talked about. How are you feeling? What are your beliefs? What's going on that day? Still, you don't get to slack off. You get to do your best that you're capable of doing on that day, right? All right. So then the next section in emotional intelligence is around decision making. And so in decision making, the categories are problem solving, reality testing, and impulse control. All right, problem solving in decision making. So often we get wrapped up in the emotions of problems. What if you could take the emotion out and solve the problem? What might it look like? What might the solution be? And then in reality testing, look, our reality, like I already said, is painted by our beliefs and our emotions. All of that is tainted by the thoughts that we have. All right, because thoughts come first, then emotions, then beliefs, right? There are some who say that emotions come first and then it's thought. They've already shown with brain scans that based on the area of the brain where it lights up, that there is a thought. It may be just a split second, but there's a thought first and then the emotion, right? So you have the thought, and then based on your experience and your belief around it, then the emotion is built up. Then you make decisions and actions and get results as a result of that, right? Okay, so reality testing. Why am I bringing all of that up in reality testing? What you're saying is reality is your reality. It may not be anyone else's reality around you. It just may not. Earlier, I was talking about that every situation is neutral. Well, it is. Every situation is neutral. Reality is based on the meanings and beliefs that are surrounding each person who's looking at that situation. So do some testing, do some reality testing. What is the true reality here? Okay. And then lastly, impulse control. I often ask when I'm in a classroom environment with this, if people have ever been a puppet, and people are like, no, nobody pulls my strings. Really? You never get triggered? Look, you're human. You're human. And if you didn't hear me the first 2 times, here it is again. You're human. All of us are human. We all have triggers. We all have puppet strings that can get pulled by different situations. What do you do if you have a new puppy and you catch it peeing on the floor? Right? You get triggered. It may not make you angry, but it causes you to respond or react, right? So what is it that you get to do around impulse control? dig into your beliefs, dig into your emotions, dig into the thoughts, dig into all of that. What are you saying to yourself? What meaning are you giving something so that you can have better impulse control? It's by knowing all of that that's happening in here that allows you to have improved impulse control. Okay. All right. Stress management. So the components of stress management: flexibility, tolerance, optimism. Yeah, I know that optimism part. Positivity, toxic positivity is now out there too, right? Look, it's not about being ridiculous, and being optimistic, being positive is a way to reset the meaning that you're giving to a situation. Okay. So, what's your flexibility around it? What is your tolerance around it? The best way that you can manage stress is to redefine a stressful situation as non-stressful. What? How do you do that? Yeah, it's by looking at those thoughts. Remember, I keep coming back to that. What are the thoughts that you have around the situation? What is the meaning that you are giving to the situation? What if your thoughts and beliefs and meaning around it could be shifted? Could you make it less stressful? The answer is yes, 100% yes. Doesn't mean that it's a better situation. It could still be a crappy situation. And when you come at it from a different angle, you can remove the stress from it. There may still be some stress. However, when you use certain techniques, starting with understanding what your thoughts and meanings around it are, and then you can do breathing techniques and you can do some physicality things and all of that. There's a lot that you can do to shift a stressful situation into a non-stressful situation. Okay. All right. Emotional intelligence. We've covered a lot: self-perception, self-expression, interpersonal decision-making, stress management. All of these are components of emotional intelligence. What is it that has come up for you today? What is it that is really maybe triggering you? What's a puppet string that maybe got pulled today? What's coming up in your inner voices? I want you to get really clear on any of the thoughts that you're having around this or any of the meaning that you're giving to this, right? So jot that down. Let me know any questions that you have about today. You can put it in the comments. You can send me a DM. We're live today on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. And I think that's it. I can't remember. So you can DM me if you have any questions about any of this. We're going to have a Q&A session in a couple of days, in a few days. So I'll be able to address any questions that come into me. So let me know what those are. And I want to know how you're going to take this and implement it. Let me know. Let me know where you feel like you could level up your emotional intelligence. How might this benefit you, whether it's your day-to-day life, your work life, your home life, wherever? Where might you be able to hone this skill, build this muscle, this emotional intelligence muscle a little better, a little bigger, a little stronger? Tell me what that looks like for you. You can put it in the comments. And I appreciate you for showing up today, for watching. And I will see you tomorrow, same time, same place. And we'll be diving into the next power skill that is one of the most important. They're all important. However, I've done them in the order of the ones that I get asked about the most. Well, tomorrow's is not one that I get asked about as most. However, it's being shown to be actually more important than emotional intelligence. So be ready for that one. That's tomorrow, noon Eastern, on whichever channel it was that you watched this, whichever platform it was that you watched this. Join me tomorrow for the next power skill, and I will see you there.